Hi, and welcome to the Yes Tale Story Channel. How lovely to see you. My name is Jess, and in this episode, I'll be reading The Glass Dog by L. Frank Baum. If you like this video, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. That would really make my day. So make sure you're warm and snug. Close your eyes and clear your mind from any worries. Take a deep breath. Let's begin. Once upon a time, there was an accomplished wizard who lived on the top floor of a tenement house. He passed his time in thoughtful study and studious thought, and what he didn't know about wizardry was hardly worth knowing, for he owned all the books and recipes of all the wizards who had lived before him. And on top of that, he'd invented several wizard mints himself. This admirable person would have been completely happy if it wasn't for the numerous interruptions to his studies caused by people who came to consult him about their troubles, in which he had no interest, and by the loud knocks of various delivery men, like the milkman or the baker's boy. He never dealt with any of these people, but they rapped at his door every day to see him about this or that, or to try and sell him their goods. Just when he was deeply engaged with his books or carefully watching the bubbling of a cauldron, there would be a knock on his door. And after sending the intruder away, he always found that he had lost his train of thought or ruined his compound. After a while, these interruptions started to arouse his anger, so he decided the best thing would be to get a dog to keep people away from his door. He didn't know where to find a dog, but next door lived a poor glass blower that he'd spoken to every once in a while. So he went to the man's apartment and asked, "Do you know where I can find a dog?" "What sort of dog?" inquired the glass blower. "A good dog. One that will bark at people and scare them away. One that will be no trouble to keep and won't expect to be fed. One that has no fleas and is neat in his habits. One that will obey me when I speak to him. In short, a good dog," said the wizard. "Such a dog is hard to find," the glass blower replied, who was busy making a blue glass flower pot with a pink glass rose bush in it, with green glass leaves and yellow glass roses. The wizard watched him thoughtfully. "Could you blow me a dog out of glass?" he asked. "I can," declared the glass blower, "but it won't bark at people, you know." "Oh, I can fix that easily enough," the wizard replied. "If I couldn't make a glass dog bark, I would be a mighty poor wizard." "Very well, if you can use a glass dog, I'll be pleased to blow one for you, but you must pay me for my work." "Of course," agreed the wizard. "But I don't have any of that horrid stuff you call money. You would have to take some of my goods in exchange." The glass blower considered this for a moment. "Could you give me something to cure my rheumatism?" he asked. "Oh yes, easily." "Then we have a deal. I'll start working on the dog right now. What colour of glass would you like me to use?" "Pink is a pretty colour," said the wizard, "and it's unusual for a dog, isn't it?" "Very," answered the glass blower, "but pink it is." The wizard returned to his studies, and the glass blower started making the dog. Next morning, he entered the wizard's room with the glass dog under his arm and placed it carefully on the table. It was a beautiful pink colour with a fine coat of spun glass, and around his neck was a blue glass ribbon. Its eyes was made from specks of black glass, and they sparkled intelligently, as do many of the glass eyes worn by men. The wizard was very pleased with the glass blower's skill and handed him a small vial in return. "This will cure your rheumatism," he said. "But the vial is empty," the glass blower protested. "Oh no, there's one drop of liquid in it," the wizard replied. "Will one drop cure my rheumatism?" inquired the glass blower, amazed. "Most certainly. It is a marvellous remedy. The one drop in the vial will cure any kind of disease ever known to humanity in an instant. Therefore, it's especially good for rheumatism. But guard it well, for it is the only drop of its kind in the world, and I've forgotten the recipe." "Thank you," said the glass blower, and returned to his room. The wizard then cast a wizzy spell and mumbled several very complicated words in the wizardese language over the glass dog, whereby the little animal first wagged its tail from side to side, then winked its left eye knowingly, and at last started barking in a most frightful manner. That is, when you stop to consider that this noise came from a pink glass dog. There's something almost astonishing in the magic arts of wizards, unless, of course, you'd know how to do these things yourself, in which case you would not be expected to be astonished by them. The wizard was as delighted as a school teacher at the success of his spell, although he was not astonished. He immediately placed the dog outside his door, where it would bark at anyone who dared knock, and so disturb the studies of its master. Back in his room, the glass blower decided not to use the one drop of the wizard's magic cure-it-all. "My rheumatism is better today," he reflected, "so it's probably wise to save this medicine until I'm very ill and will need it more." He placed the vial in his cupboard and went to work blowing more roses out of glass. But then he worried that the medicine might not keep, so he decided to ask the wizard about it. But when he reached the wizard's door, the glass dog barked so fiercely that he was too scared to knock and quickly returned to his own room. Yes, the poor man was quite upset at receiving such an unfriendly reception from the dog that he himself had so carefully and skillfully made. Next morning, as he read his newspaper, he noticed an article stating that the beautiful Miss Midas, the wealthiest young lady in town, was very ill, and the doctors had given up hope of her recovery. The glass blower, although miserably poor, hard-working, and rather plain-looking, was a man of ideas. He collected his precious medicine and decided to use it for something more worthwhile than relieving his own suffering. He dressed himself in his best clothes, brushed his hair and combed his whiskers, washed his hands and tied his necktie, blackened his shoes and sponged his vest, and then he put the vial of magic cure-it-all in his pocket. Next he locked his door, went downstairs, and walked through the streets to the grand mansion where the wealthy Miss Midas resided. The butler opened the door and said, "No soap, no vegetables, no hair oil, no books, no baking powder. My young lady is dying, and we already have everything we need for the funeral." The glass blower was annoyed at being taken for a salesman. "My friend," he began proudly, but the butler interrupted him, saying, "No tombstones either. There is already a family graveyard and the monument is built." "The graveyard won't be needed if you allow me to speak," said the glass blower. "No doctors, sir. They've given up on my young lady, and she's given up on the doctors," continued the butler calmly. "I'm not a doctor," the glass blower replied. "Nor are the others. But what is your errand then?" "I'm here to cure your young lady with a magical compound." "Do come in, please. Take a seat in the hall. I'll speak to the housekeeper," said the butler more politely. The butler spoke to the housekeeper, and the housekeeper mentioned the matter to the steward, and the steward consulted the chef, and the chef kissed the lady's maid and sent her to see the stranger. So the wealthy are still bound to ceremony, even when dying. When the glass blower told the lady's maid that he had a medicine that would cure her mistress, she said, "I'm so glad you came. But," he said, "if I restore your mistress to health, she must marry me." "I'll make inquiries and see if she's willing," answered the maid, and off she went to consult Miss Midas. The young lady did not hesitate at all. "I'd marry any old thing rather than die," she cried. "Bring him to me at once." The glass blower came, poured the magic drop into a glass of water, gave it to the patient, and the next minute Miss Midas was healthier than ever. "Dear me," she exclaimed, "I have an engagement at the Fritters' reception tonight. Bring my pearl-coloured silk, Marie, and I will start getting ready. And don't forget to cancel the order for the funeral flowers and your mourning gown." "But Miss Midas," objected the glass blower, slightly impatient, "you promised to marry me if I cured you." "I know," said the young lady, "but we must have time to make a proper announcement in the society papers and have the wedding cards engraved. Come back tomorrow and we'll talk it over." The glass blower had not impressed her favourably as a husband, and she was glad she'd found an excuse to get rid of him for a while. And she did not want to miss the Fritters' reception. Yet the man went home filled with joy, for he thought his plan had succeeded, and that he was about to marry a rich wife who would keep him in luxury from then on. The first thing he did upon reaching his room was to smash his glass-blowing tools and throw them out the window. He then sat down to figure out ways of spending his wife's money. The following day he called upon Miss Midas, who was reading a novel and eating chocolate creams as happily as if she'd never been ill in her life. "Where did you get the magic compound that cured me?" she asked. "From a very skillful wizard," he said, and then, thinking it might interest her, he told her how he had made the wizard a glass dog, and how it barked and kept everyone from bothering him. "How delightful," she said. "I've always wanted a glass dog that could bark." "I'm afraid there's only one in the world," he answered, "and it belongs to the wizard." "You must buy it for me," Lady Midas exclaimed. "The wizard doesn't care about money," replied the glass blower. "Then you must steal it for me," she retorted. "I can't live happily for another day unless I have a glass dog that can bark." The glass blower felt very distressed, but said he would see what he could do. For a man should always try to please his wife, and Miss Midas had promised to marry him within a week. On his way home, he purchased a heavy sack, and when he passed the wizard's door and the pink glass dog ran out to bark at him, he threw the sack over the dog, tied the opening with a piece of twine, and carried him back to his room. The next day he sent the sack by a messenger boy to Miss Midas with his compliments, and later that afternoon he went to see her in person, feeling quite sure he would be received with gratitude for stealing the dog she so greatly desired. But when he came to the door and the butler opened it, he was amazed to see the glass dog rush out and start barking at him furiously. "Call off your dog," he shouted in terror. "I can't, sir," answered the butler. "My young lady has ordered the glass dog to bark whenever you knock on the door. You better look out, sir," he added, "for if it bites you, you might get glassophobia." This frightened the poor glass blower so much that he left in a hurry, but he stopped at a phone box and used his last cents to make a call, so he could talk to Miss Midas without being bitten by the dog. "Give me the Midas residence, 6742, he told the operator. "Hello," said a voice. "I would like to speak to Miss Midas," said the glass blower. Instantly, a sweet voice said, "This is Miss Midas. What is it regarding?" "Why have you treated me so cruelly and set the glass dog on me?" asked the poor fellow. "Well, to tell you the truth," Miss Midas answered, "I don't like your looks. Your cheeks are pale and baggy, your hair is coarse and long, your eyes are small and red, your hands are big and rough, and you're bow-legged." "But I can't help the way I look," pleaded the glass blower, "and you promised to marry me." "If you were better looking, I'd keep my promise," she replied. "But under the circumstances, you are not a good match for me, and if you don't stay away from my mansion, I will set my glass dog on you." She then put the phone down, and there was nothing more he could say. The miserable glass blower went home with his heart bursting with disappointment and fell into a great depression. Suddenly there was a knock on the door, and opening it, he saw the wizard. "I've lost my dog," he announced. "Have you really?" replied the glass blower. "Yes, someone has stolen him." "That's too bad," declared the glass blower indifferently. "You must make me a new one," said the wizard. "I can't, unfortunately. I got rid of all my tools." "Then what can I do?" asked the wizard. "I don't know. Perhaps you could offer a reward for the dog." "But I don't have any money," said the wizard. "Offer some of your compounds then," suggested the glass blower. "The only thing I can spare," replied the wizard thoughtfully, "is a beauty powder." "What?" cried the glass blower. "You really have such a thing?" "Yes, indeed. Whoever takes the powder will become the most beautiful person in the world." "If you were to offer that as a reward, I will try and find the dog for you. All I want in life is to be beautiful," said the glass blower eagerly. "But I warn you, the beauty will only be skin deep," said the wizard. "That's all right," replied the happy glass blower. "When I lose my skin, I won't care about being beautiful." "Then tell me where to find my dog and you can have the powder," promised the wizard. So the glass blower went out and pretended to search, and after a while he returned and said, "I've found the dog. He's in the mansion where Miss Midas lives." The wizard immediately went to see if this was true, and sure enough, the glass dog ran out and started barking at him. But the wizard spread out his hands and chanted a magic spell which made the dog fall fast asleep, and then he picked him up and carried him back to his room on the top floor of the tenement house. He then brought the beauty powder to the glass blower as a reward, and the glass blower immediately swallowed it and became the most beautiful man in the world. The next time he called upon Miss Midas, there was no dog there to bark at him. And when the young lady saw him, she fell instantly in love with his beauty. "If only you were a count or a prince," she sighed, "then I'd willingly marry you." "But I am a prince," he answered. "I'm the Prince of Dog Blowers." "Ah," she said. "Well, if you would be willing to accept an allowance of $4 a week, I'll order the engraved wedding cards." The man hesitated, but when he thought of his earlier despair, he agreed to the terms. And so they were married, and you might think they lived happily ever after. But no. The bride was very jealous of her husband's beauty and led him a dog's life. And he managed to get into debt and made her miserable in return. As for the glass dog, the wizard used his wizardness to make him bark again and placed him outside his door where he belonged. And I suppose he's still there to this day, which is a shame, because I would like to ask the wizard about the moral of this story.